for connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is depression and connection. And I was listening to NPR over the weekend and heard a really interesting piece about research that's been done around depression with surprising results. So we're going to talk about that this morning. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning, and welcome to everyone else who is joining us. It's so good to be with you. And today we're talking about depression and connection. So I spent a huge part of my life with extreme depression, suicidal ideation for years and years and years, just knowing I would die because it wasn't possible for a human to be that sad and still stay alive. It was bad. It was bad. And so I found this program on NPR over the weekend to be particularly interesting. They were talking about depression and studies. I think it was on, oh my gosh, it was on sort of a science program about the brain. But they were talking about how they expected that certain areas of the brain would be more active than others, and the result was very different than what they anticipated. What they discovered was that rather than a heightened sensitivity, that they discovered that in fact certain sensory input was reduced. So the vividness of our senses was reduced, and as a result, what happened is that people experience or are better in air quotes, able to experience more of an echo chamber because there's reduced sensory input. So there's more volume sort of for the ruminations. And they theorize or hypothesize that the reasoning behind this, not that it's reason, but that the reason for this was a defensive mechanism to sort of try to shut down extra sensory input so that we could better process whatever that emotional threat was. And that's pretty fascinating. So one of the people was talking about how I suppose they had suffered a lot from depression, how they had a practice of connecting to their environment. And we talk about mindfulness quite a lot, where we're allowing ourselves to be present to our environment. So whether it's a pen or a pencil, or it's nature, or whatever it is, to actually be engaged with something that is sensory, to be elevating our senses, maybe through music, maybe through visuals, maybe through sensation. We know that a lot of people who have depression do things like cutting. And what's up with that? Well, it's a way to feel something, right? It's an extreme, certainly, but if we can recognize that that's what's behind that behavior, maybe there is a pattern of experience that we can deliberately generate to stimulate these other senses, to stimulate a connection. And that's really at the base root, to stimulate a connection, a greater connection with the world around us and with our own senses, with our body. So apparently this is characterized by a lack of a connection to the body, that we actually become sort of dissociated. I found it truly, truly fascinating, and in correlation with the work, the core connection work that I do, I find it also very fascinating, because there's a big bodily component, sense-based component to this work, to the core connection work, where we'll say, okay, what's the emotion? Where do you experience that emotion in your body? What does it feel like? So in hearing this new science around depression, it really validated the process. Not that it needed validation, but it validated through scientific information the process that has been so powerfully effective with core connection work. And so this idea of dissociation, body dysmorphia, not feeling connected. So many people have, in work that I've done with clients, have expressed that they don't really feel like they're in their body. And so how interesting is that that's a correlate for depression, for an experience of depression. And we, so many of us on a spiritual path. Rosalind says, oh my gosh. So Rosalind says, just rewatched the movie My Octopus Teacher. 2/3 of their body is their brain, sensory touch. Oh my gosh, Rosalind, that is one of my favorite movies of all time. If you haven't, anybody out there, if you haven't seen My Octopus Teacher, please give yourself the gift of it. It's spectacular. And they are such brilliantly intelligent creatures. And how bizarre that some of them live for such a very short period of time. But spectacular. And when that begs the notion, if 2/3 of their body is their brain's getting direct sensory input. Our brains get direct sensory input too, but we are so often at war with our bodies, right? Trying to control them, trying to dominate them, seeing the body as an it that is separate from ourselves. And I noticed that, well, I have I have lately been embarking on, and I want to say experiment, but it's really not an experiment as much as a practice of communicating directly, having a sort of a, a conscious dialogue, shall we say, with my body. For a great portion of my life, my body was not my friend. I did not consider my body as my friend. I've had challenges with health issues all my life: asthma, allergies, alopecia, three A's. There you go, triple A, as well as a bunch of other autoimmune issues, four A's. And so the challenge was to dominate and control the body, get it to do what I wanted it to do, to stop having the symptoms, to override these things, to heal it through medicine or diet or whatever. And so, interestingly, this practice began for me, and I'm sharing it because it's been so powerful, and I think it's probably available to all of us to explore and sort of discover and cultivate a relationship with our bodies that can be profoundly healing. So rather than dealing with our psyche, our ego, our body as enemies, what if we embraced all of those aspects of ourselves as friends and teachers? And so this new relationship with my body has really blossomed as a result of my walking practice, which I've taken to walking early in the mornings for an hour and a half, and it's been life-changing because it's given me the opportunity to explore where I live. And I have discovered places that I never knew were here. I've discovered beauty that I never knew was here. And in addition, I've discovered my body in ways that I never had before. And what I mean by that is that through the walking, I would experience all kinds of aches and pains, sometimes really extreme shooting pain, or other time some tightness or irritation or whatever. And I have consciously invited my body into partnership, which is, for me, it was a really novel concept, I just have to say. And what I've noticed is that my body has, hello, its own intelligence. Like how come it took me so long to figure that one out, right? But our bodies have their own intelligence, and what if they're giving us signals? It's a way for our body being, to communicate with our awareness, potentially, if we listen, to say, hey, this needs addressing, or that needs addressing, or pay attention. And so when I recontextualized the notion of these aches and pains, instead of a problem that I had to deal with or that I was victim to, as a communication. to say, hey, pay attention. And my response was, wow, I feel that. And body, can you, this is the way I say it, can you magic that? In other words, can you address that sensation to relieve it? And pretty much most of the time, that pain that might have been crippling in the past goes away. It's kind of like, and I don't mean to demean the body, the intelligence of the body by making this comparison, but it's kind of like when a little kid, you're with a little kid and the little kid is tugging at your sleeve, and if you ignore the little kid tugging at your sleeve, eventually they might start screaming and kicking and crying. Whereas if instead you can say, hey, what's going on? And, let's communicate. When that little kid is tugging at your sleeve, then it diffuses the issue many times, maybe not always. So there have been a couple instances where the issue did not get diffused and I needed to take greater action. And it also made me aware enough to step into deeper dialoguing with my body to say, okay, what do we need here? Body, mind, and spirit, what do we need here? What's the communication? Rather than trying to fix something that's broken, that I have, that's over there, to be part of and integrated with that interaction, and to first and foremost receive it as a communication. So I can't say how many stories I've heard of people who got cancer who then made life changes in terms of oftentimes career or relationship or lifestyle, who have made these radical changes and have found much greater happiness and peace. And I have heard many, many people say how their dis-ease was a path to healing on a much, much greater scale, on a holistic scale, not just a physical scale. That there were incredible lessons that were communicated or generated or received, whatever the words are, through the physical challenges that they needed, that they had to confront. So what I notice is issues in our lives, and this is the case, for instance, with intuition, if we could call it intuition, where we get a message like, hey, maybe it's time to make a change around this, that, or the other thing, right? And we don't pay attention, and then we hear the message again, but it's louder, and it gets progressively louder until we end up getting clobbered by a 2x4 sometimes, so that we have no choice other than to make that change. And good morning, Sue. So good to have you with us this morning. Welcome. So it only takes a few times of being hit by that 2x4 that, for us, at least for me anyway, it took probably 3 times to really get clobbered by that 2x4 to say, okay, I'm gonna listen from now on. Like now it's when I hear that whisper, I pay attention. And my life is so much easier for that. And I think that the same kind of thing happens with the body is let's pay attention. What do we notice? And what can we learn as a partner with our bodies, like another dimension of our intelligence speaking to us, communicating with us. And this whole, it was a revelation to me, this study around depression. And it was a revelation to the researchers too. It was completely opposite from what they thought. They thought that people were just overwhelmed by stimulus. And instead, what was happening is that lots and lots of stimulus was getting filtered out to try to attend to the urgent emotional requirement of whatever was behind the depression. So to be able to deliberately, knowing that that's what's happening in the brain, to be deliberately connecting, to be deliberately finding sensory stimulation, to connect to it, to be present to a flower, to dig into the colors, the shapes, the beauty, for example, to try to open up those pathways again in a conscious and deliberate way. Sensory experience. It's interesting because we know that sometimes people in depression will get more compulsive around eating. We'll eat more, we'll drink more, we'll sometimes engage in risky behavior. And maybe all of those things are an unconscious way of trying to get more stimulation to get out of that depression. If we can know that cultivating connection, sensory connection, connection to the world, connection to others, if we can know that deliberately cultivating those connections can mitigate the experience of depression, then that gives us a pathway to maybe find ourselves again, because we're disconnected, not just from the world, but we're disconnected from ourselves or dimensions of ourselves, of our being alive, of aliveness itself, right? Because we're shutting down all these externals so that we can try and sort through our own echo chamber, which is actually quite self-defeating. Rather, I mean, it seems to be the process that the brain goes through, but we can actively mitigate that with intentionality. So Rosalind says, shining a light to look closer, illuminating shadows and dark corners, ignite curiosity. Curiosity is the cure for so many things. It's remarkable. So to continue, closing the eyes shut of our sight sensory. Closing the eyes shuts off our sight sensory, driving deeper into where in the body is feeling. Yes, to more deeply connect rather than to become more disconnected, to deeply connect. And that brings us back to ourself, to our center, to our core, and brings us back to life itself. So it's very, I think it's more and more obvious as we're discovering new aspects of interconnectivity and interrelationship that connection is life. Connection is life. Connection to others, connection, deep connection to ourselves. That's connection to our own vitality, to our life force. And so if you find yourself in an experience of depression, to come back to the very simple sensory experiences could be very healing and empowering and enlivening. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. Um, Rosalind says, growing back a severed arm relating to the octopuses, actually, I think it is. Yeah, I don't, there's all kinds of capabilities that we have the potential to achieve. I don't know about growing back a severed arm, but certainly metaphorically, right? Anyway, that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to like, follow, and share Enlightened World Network and me. The links are in the description. And until next time. Before I say until next time, I just want to say how much I appreciate you and the opportunity to be having these musings together. And until next time, so much love to you.